Shahed, welcome to Let the Quran Speak.
Thank you. Thank you for having
Now,
me.
do you really think capitalism can be ethical?
So this is a question I've grappled with quite a bit because I'm originally kind of an entrepreneur from Silicon Valley. I've worked on companies that both serve Muslim communities and serve broader communities, and I draw from our history. I know that our Prophet and Khadija were capitalists. They were ethical capitalists. We had.
How would you call them ethical?
So capitalism is a tool. It is evil in the hands of evil people, and it is constructive in the hands of constructive people.
Okay.
And we have guidelines in place on how we're supposed to treat people in commerce. And because we do, we've had centuries of Muslim traders and commercial actors that have gone around the world. If you look at places like Indonesia, places that their curiosity about Islam was triggered by the ethical behavior of the traders that came to be with them. And if you can create an economy that values every participant and every stakeholder, doesn't abuse people, doesn't take advantage of people's position, you can generate wealth for everyone. And I think that this is not just something that's embedded in our faith. I think it's an Islamic imperative in the world that we live in. We live in a world where the haves are getting more, the have-nots are getting less. We're on the verge of a permanent underclass in this world. And when you look at Muslim communities around the world, we have pools of money, we have talent, we have large markets that need to be served, and they're not connected in an equitable and balanced way.
So capitalism isn't very good at distributing wealth equally, and it's also not very good at, attributing value to things that don't have market value. Right?
You need to insert ethical behavior and ethical people into that system in order to make it work. Because the one thing that capitalism does very well is generate wealth. And that is something that is needed in this world. You can't have people who are unemployed all over the place. So I think Islam brings to that sphere rules and responsibilities that can help tame that. And unfortunately, I don't think that's being applied very much now.
So what sort of Islamic rules are you thinking about?
So for example, we've all heard about, Islamic finance and the rules about interest, and, the idea behind that is that you're not supposed to take advantage of someone's state of not having money, right? That if you're going to loan people money or invest in someone, that you're sharing risk, so that I don't just make money because I have money, right? When I invest in you and you lose, I lose too. But part of that is because we're in as partners, not as master-servant, right? So that's one example. The second example is just our ethical rules of behavior. We're told that if you have to pay the laborer before their sweat dries, right? Think about that, what that means from an ethical perspective. In a world where people are cheated, lied to, unfortunately a lot even in Muslim commerce. And that idea that, people have to be compensated not just fairly but immediately, right? There's rules like this that govern every aspect of commerce, and if we were really to try to properly apply those, I think that this world would be a better place. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do at a global level with the work that we're doing at Affinis Labs, the company.
So tell me what your plans are with Affinis Labs.
So there's a couple of different things. So I've spent several years going around to Muslim entrepreneurs in more underdeveloped and post-conflict zones. So in Africa, Middle East, Southeast Asia.
How have you found them? Located them?
Interestingly is that I started to discover them when I was a diplomat at the U.S. Department of State.
Oh, nice.
Because my mission was to go meet with young Muslims around the world and to figure out how to connect them to Muslims here in North America. And what was really great is that everywhere you go around the world, partly because of social media and the internet, we're developing a global idea of what it means to be Muslim, not just regional, but global. So people are starting to connect their identities together. And when you connect your identities together, you can work across borders, you can mentor each other, you can create businesses together. And these people, they loved the idea of getting mentorship and help, but what they really needed was funding. And the funding is still locked up in places like Kuala Lumpur and Dubai and Saudi Arabia. And it's really reserved for very kind of wealthy things. Unfortunately, they're not willing to take a chance on a small startup in Somalia.
Which might fail.
Yeah, but they'll invest $50 million in a hotel, no problem. I used to get very frustrated. They'd pull me onto stages in the Middle East and say, "Here's an example of a Muslim entrepreneur." I'm like, "Well, why don't any of you invest in me? What is 1 million is pocket change to you?" Yeah. So we're trying to flip that on its head. So we're trying to create economic systems that will invest in a startup in Somalia or a startup in Tunisia, Doesn't even need to be a tech startup. But the idea is that there's talent there that will perform if put into the right condition. Think, for example, about Muslim immigrants to North America. You know, this idea that Islam holds you back that some people have out there. But when you bring Muslims to North America and you put them in an environment like this, they thrive. So why don't we create those kinds of environments all over the world, all over the Muslim world, and our goal is to make being Muslim a competitive advantage. That if you are a Muslim in a place where there's nothing going on, by virtue of the fact that you're connected to these people around the world, you have an advantage over your neighbor in terms of being successful. So we're trying to do this by raising funds that will be used to support startups in these emerging markets around the world. We're trying to create systems online that allow people who, in more developed countries, to mentor people in less developed countries. So imagine if you got Palestinian diaspora folks in North America to mentor and help fund startups in Palestine. They now have a support network that's going to help them. We don't have something like that put in place right now. This is really strong also with Somalis. We've done work with Somalis in North America to help connect them to Somali startups and entrepreneurs in Somalia. And because of that bond, you know, they really want them to succeed. And so they're going to trip over themselves and like advise and do whatever they can to help them get there. So how do we formalize this structure? How do we create these funding opportunities, go over these barriers of things like the Muslim ban and whatever, and help these people have some hope in their future? Because
you've established the venture fund?
We announced the fund 2 years ago in Dubai, and it's a $250 million fund. We've since had run into the geopolitics of the Muslim world, which means we're now going to be centering it in Silicon Valley rather than in Kuala Lumpur, where it was going to be based.
So are the investors American?
So as of now, most of the investors are American.
That's amazing.
I mean, it's if they can see the value, and unfortunately, you know, our people can't, we're maybe going to have to go through an iteration like this before they realize there really is something there. Because at the end of the day, it's also about value creation. We're not just, this is not charity. Entrepreneurship is not charity. People are going to fail. We accept that they fail. We also accept that they're going to learn from their failure and become better. And this is also a part of the Islamic landscape. You know, a normal venture fund would invest in you. They have the right of first return. If you fail and you walk away penniless, they don't care. That's not the way we would do things. We share that risk with you. If you succeed, we succeed. If you fail, we will invest in you again if we feel you've learned your lesson.
Can you give me an example of a startup that you're interested in investing in?
I will give you an example of a company that was invested in by the predecessor fund to the one that we announced. So there was this husband and wife team in Aceh province, Indonesia. High school education. They had started a recycling company where they recruited people around them to help collect bottles, things like that, and then bring them to a central place to be recycled. So my partner, who's based in Silicon Valley, who's doing this fund with us, he went to them and said, I want to invest $4.5 million in your company. And they said, what? Is that a loan? Like, I don't understand. Like, I don't get it. Why would you think that? He said, I think you're onto something innovative here. I think you can scale it up. I'm here to help you. So he invested that $4.5 million. Within a few years, it became the second largest waste processing company in Aceh province, employing 10,000 employees, 90% of them women, and is on track to go public. Now, no standard venture fund or entity would have looked at them and said there's value there and that there's talent there that can be amplified. But this fund did, because it was specifically looking for talent in those unexpected places. So the whole idea of this fund is we're going to go around the world, look in these unexpected places where the rest of the world has written these people off, and we're going to find the really talented people. You know what?
That's very exciting.
You know what the great thing about it is when you look at like Palestinian entrepreneurs or Somali entrepreneurs, they're not afraid of risk. They've been through everything.
They've got nothing to lose.
They've got literally nothing to lose, right? Whereas maybe somebody like in a place like the Emirates
so
or whatever.
they might be more entrepreneurial.
They're incredibly entrepreneurial.
Inventive, right?
Absolutely. The rules don't apply to them anymore. That's the energy you want to tap into. Now imagine what happens if one of them succeeds. Everybody who knows that person, they now have a model of success they can look to. They now have hope in their future. They can emulate that record. They can tap into that network. We're already working with entrepreneurs in Gaza, for example, and you know, in Tunisia and Somalia and some of these other places.
And it seems like you're interested in startups that have sort of social value.
Yes. I mean, again, this is part of like the Islamic ethic of capitalism, is that all of these things have to have some kind of positive social impact. So, I mean, the recycling company obviously has a social impact,
Yes.
right? We've worked with, for example, companies in East Africa that are employing youth. One of the companies that we worked with in Tunisia was building handicrafts, but they hired people with disabilities to do it, right? And these are all part of their market plan, right? And so there's so many possibilities out there that people are ignoring. And we have all the tools that are in our broader community. Why don't we just take advantage of that? So take a look at, we're announcing some really great things in the next couple months that are going to take things to the next level, particularly with the financial aspect of it. So if you look at our website.
We'll keep watching.
Please
It's very
do.
exciting.
Yes, no,
Yeah.
we're very excited about it. We think it's going to be transformative.
Thank you so much, Shahed, for your time.
Thanks.